Welcome to the Postmodern Polymath Podcast. It's just one polymath this week again. It's episode 124. Thank you for joining me. This week I have on someone who, I actually know her from, I initially heard of her from Everyone's Agnostic with Cass. The show I was on once. Okay, you don't care. But anyway, so he decided to retire. So she started her own podcast. And it's Everyone's Autonomous. Let me make sure I got this. I actually had this written down. It's damn it. Sorry, y'all. I'm looking at Zach's tweets, not not hers. She is the host of the podcast Everyone's Autonomous and life coach for those exploring ethical non-monogamy. I'll let her tell a little about what her podcast is about when she comes on. First of all, I wanted to mention that tonight will be an old fan favorite. Well, an old favorite of mine anyway. I don't give a fuck what you think. This is Old Rasputin, my favorite. The beer that started me on the journey to craft beers. Anyway, without further ado, we'll bring on somebody more attractive, both physically, mentally, and emotionally, I'm sure. Marie Delefont, is that right?
Sure, yeah. I'm cracking up over here backstage.
In the green room, yeah.
In the green room. It was very green.
I wish it was green.
I wish I would have brought my drink up here. I just gulped it down before I came up here and silently told myself, all right, don't admit that you've been drinking. And now I realize I should have brought a drink.
No, beer is alcohol is the integral part of this shit.
I did not know that. Damn it. Yeah. Shit, all I got is water.
I'll drink enough for both of us.
If you could, that would mean a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
I won't have a problem doing that. Like I said, Marie, you are the host of Everyone's Autonomous podcast. But as I initially stated, I also heard you first on Everyone's Agnostic podcast, along with Cass, and he made quite a good decision, I thought, bringing you on. Of course, anybody who knows about that podcast, you know the one I was on once. I'm not very impressed.
Do you remember which number it was?
Oh, Jesus. It was the early numbers. I can't remember.
Oh, it was really early? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Jesus. That was right after my ReasonCon debacle. But anyway, of course, this show was about kind of talking to religion, people who were ex-religious and kind of what they went through coming out of religion. And your show is kind of expands on that a little bit. It kind of goes further into the process of what now, right?
Yeah.
Can you just go ahead and give it what you would consider a brief description?
Yeah, absolutely. I think where Everyone's Agnostic was kind of a platform mostly to share the stories of people who have left religion and mostly focus on that particular narrative with some deviations and wanderings. Everyone's Autonomous touches on those stories as part of the show, but then also I'm very preoccupied with the now what, like you said, okay, great. We've realized that God's not real as far as we can tell, at least in the way that we were taught. And so now what? How do we reorient ourselves? How do we process the trauma if we've identified as someone who's experienced trauma within religion? How do we process that? And then how do we reframe the earth, this experience that we're within, so that we're not constantly living our lives out thinking, yay, we figured it out. There's no God. And now we can just live our lives without worrying about anything. I think there's a really important process to be had of kind of recalibrating yourself as a human being, as a shit-making biological being that has been formed through so many years of evolution. And what does that mean to you? And how does that change the story about who you are and your history? And so those are the kinds of stories I like to hit on, as well as unpacking other narratives. Like we've unpacked Christianity, we've unpacked religion. What else can we unpack? Can we unpack racism? Can we unpack misogyny? Can we unpack patriarchy associated with that, classism? A lot of those social justice issues that this show talks about. And so I try to encourage people to keep on challenging the narratives, not just the religion that you were born in, but all of the narratives the culture installs and instills in us.
Well, first of all, shit making was interesting. It kind of brings you down to earth. We're water bags that like eat and shit and sometimes like build things.
Yeah, we're electrified tapioca pudding.
Yeah. Ooh,
there you go.
Yeah, but I like your because I've heard some of your episodes, and I like the stories that come out. They're real, they're personal. They're even sad, but at the end, most of the time, they're kind of uplifting because they're coming out of the bullshit that is religion, pretty much. Of course, I never really was that deep into it. I guess mine was kind of a gradual process, but I do know a lot of people, such as your guest and such as Cass himself, who kind of came out of that tradition. And hearing these stories is just, I can't even imagine the kind of shit the kind of mind, the brainwashing, and then the deprogramming you have to go through in order to come back to reality, I guess.
Yeah. And I can't imagine what it would be like to have a mind like yours that didn't guzzle the Kool-Aid and like inject it into your veins like it was heroin. Like I'm so jealous of folks like yourself and other people who didn't take it as seriously or who disregarded it at age 16, 17, or just kind of threw it away as if it was like a used shoe. Like, okay, I'm done with that. Time to move on with the rest of my life. That was just something from my youth. And so I find it hard to like empathize with what kind of mind that would be like. And I have to just imagine your life is perfect and that you have no problems at all because you don't have that. You're not carrying that at all. But I know that's not true.
You can't see my face on the audio if you're listening to it. Like, I'm sorry? Actually, I had a semi-religious upbringing, and living in the South, actually, there are more things than you might realize with just absorption. That I didn't even realize, like the very idea in the beginning of renouncing God as your Jesus as your savior, the one sin that you can go to hell for, I forgot what it was, renouncing
blaspheming the Holy Spirit.
Yeah
That
fucked with me.
I
was like, wait a minute, why is that fucking with me? And so there's still some things that there's, because of the culture I live in, the Southern culture I was raised in. So there is still that. My mom is pretty religious, but she's sweet, so I don't want to. But it's still there. It's more of a benign, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Well, compared to what everybody else is going through, but
right.
So what are your kind of going back and thinking about some of your episodes? What are your kind of you have highlights as to what you think are probably the most important ones? Or I know they're all like your children probably, but
that's what Cass says about his show. And I mean, maybe I feel that to some extent, but I see it as art. And so sometimes I don't really dwell too much on what I've already put out, but all the same, I mean, like, since you asked, I think probably one of my favorite episodes was one that I did with a woman named Britt Frank. And she's I don't know if she would call herself a psychologist or if she's a social worker, but she's in that field of professional psychology and counseling. And, she went through the whole rigmarole of like learning psychology per our institutions, and then she's burning it all down. Like, she's taking some really nuanced perspectives on psychology and the DSM and diagnoses and the codes that they use, and really challenging them in a way that I find really resonates with me. And I really enjoyed talking to her. And even at the end of the episode, I was like, since I have you on the line, we're going to do a mini shrink session. And I just like posed this issue at her. And I'm like, all right, diagnose and cure me in 60 seconds. And she had some like really fantastic, insightful things to say. And so she was someone I really enjoyed having on, as well as I did a YouTube video, which is separate from the podcast, with a gentleman named Dr. Eric Sprankle, and I refer to him as the satanic sex doctor. He's on Twitter and he posts the most amazing things. He's very sex positive. He's very anti-sexual shame, and he's an advocate for sex workers. And so I got to have him on the show and have him talk about his insights and the things that he's learned, and in ways that we can support and understand the sex workers in our culture better. I've really enjoyed people like that who are on the fringes of these other subjects. Like, here I am talking about coming out of religion, but then there's these other people who are pushing the boundaries in other conceptual areas. So Britt Frank and Eric Sprankle probably were one of my favorites. And then I think I also really enjoyed talking to Eric Murphy from Talk Heathen at the Atheist Community of Austin. He and I love just like pondering things together, and I think that was one episode that I especially and then the episode that I did with Jay Baker. He's the son of Tammy Faye and Jim Baker. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He's here in Minneapolis. He's a friend of mine. He runs like this kind of agnostic church, like this, it's like a Christian fandom group. Like they like reading the Bible just for funsies, and like it's a philosophical thing for them. They're not like, there's a heaven and there's a hell. There's not a lot of doctrine. And so it was really fun to talk to him and have him on the show too.
Well, it looks like you have pretty good variety, I guess.
Yeah.
On your show. Do you think, are you moving more into the direction of kind of expanding your subject matter towards more social justice issues? Are you trying to keep it more of a balance, or?
I don't think that the show will ever be exclusively about social justice issues, but I think that I would be doing an injustice to not make them a part of the conversation in one way or the other, because they are so relevant and pervasive, and partially because they aren't being talked about in certain circles, especially white circles. And so I do try to find the opportunities that are relevant to bring those things up, and to encourage people who want to talk about those particular things to come on to the show. Like I had Mandisa Thomas come on, and she's the president of Black Non-Believers. So she came on and talked about her insight around racism and the way she was raised, and her thoughts on how white people can kind of wake up and participate in the social justice and in anti-racism efforts. So yeah, I am looking for diversity. I'm not looking to be too narrow, and I've been noticing myself kind of opening up to a new realm of things recently. I'd be curious to see what your stance is on it. But I started reading Sam Harris's book, Waking Up. Have you heard of that one? Yeah. So that one is about, you're laughing. I'm curious to hear what you think.
No, we'll get into that. Although, let me just say I've become disillusioned with Mr. Harris.
Oh, yeah, that's super fair to have issues with him himself.
As far as his early... When I was kind of investigating atheist thinking for the first time, I guess, most people, go for Harris, Dawkins, the usual suspects. And I thought he was pretty smart until I realized he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
But, I mean... I think it's a good beginner's guide, but I don't know that he was fine until he started veering from his lane, and then he started getting problematic. He's trying to apply logical ivory tower white man views to social,
Yeah, I agree with you. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said in the beginning, and as far as atheism, as far as defining it and talking about it, I thought I think it's a good primer, but I would leave it there. And that's just my opinion.
No, I totally think you're right, because I heard an interview that he did with someone where they were talking about racism, and he was like trying to treat it as if it was some kind of like hypothesis. That they were proposing a hypothesis that racism exists, and he was asking for proof and stuff. And I'm like, Because this isn't just a Sam Harris thing. This is also just like this chronic, like if I can use a stereotype, but like a white man atheist stereotype of trying to apply those kinds of critical thinking skills to an assertion such as racism, which is something you just kind of have to like. I mean, there are statistics out there that can prove like the disparity in like health outcomes and health accessibility and things like that can prove that racism is systematic and stuff. But yeah, no, I've seen the same thing that you're talking about too. But like you say though, like I think his book is, I don't know if there's other books like it, but Waking Up has been really refreshing for me because I've had millions of therapists and people tell me, Marie, you need meditation. Like meditation would fix all your shit. And I get so frustrated with it because it's so triggering and it brings me back to religion and trying to pray and trying to talk to this invisible person in the sky and how gaslighting that felt when nobody talked back, or like how frustrating that was. But reading the book has been really illuminating because he's approaching it from a scientific perspective, a secular perspective, a critical perspective, and including like information about psychedelic use and that kind of thing. And so it's been helpful for me. That book in particular, but I think that book, like you say, is a book written in his lane. I don't know if you would disagree with me there, but I've been finding it helpful.
I actually probably spoke outside my knowledge base. I was thinking of the other book he wrote, The Christian Nation, but
I haven't read that one.
That's the meditation, the book about meditation.
Yes,
I think he has an app too for it, and I actually heard that it's actually pretty good as far as that goes, as the meditation part goes. I have heard good, and plus his voice is quite, I guess, soothing, sort of monotone, sort of way.
Yeah,
it's hard. It's horrible when he's trying to explain white man things or whatever. But I guess in that context, it works. So forgive me for my assumption of knowing something I thought I knew, but obviously I didn't.
No, that's all good.
I just don't like him so much. I guess I just jump right to it. Sorry.
No, that's fair. I haven't exposed myself to him a whole lot, so I don't have a very strong impression of him. So I mean, I'm sure I don't know otherwise. I just consume what I do and then critique it based on that. But I'm not surprised to hear you say what you're saying.
Well, I have strong opinions. In case nobody already knew that who listens to this show or watches this show. So I was interested to know about what your journey was, because I know you came from that sort of really religious upbringing, coming forward into what you are now, this enlightened, spirit or whatever.
There's a quote from the Bible that's like occurring to me. I am what you say I am.
Oh, God. I heard that in a movie.
Oh, really?
It was
Was it about Jesus? Because that's what Jesus said.
Yes, it was a Jesus thing, and he kept saying it. I'm like, no, see, I watch bad Christian movies as a hobby. Like if you ever listen to God-awful movies, I don't know.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah, I'll look on their thing and see if I can find something that's really bad.
I don't know if I could do that. Oh man.
Coming from where, but I mean, to me, it's just silly as fuck.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
But that's something you say when I am what you say. I just want to punch him in the face.
I know. It's like, are you from Minnesota? That's so fucking passive aggressive and like juvenile.
Anyway, so I was just wondering about kind of enlightened spirit. I was not being overly sarcastic.
No, I appreciate it. I'm very flattered. For me, so like the short and long of it is that I grew up, I guess, Lutheran to start with, which wasn't super dramatic and sensational. But I knew there was a heaven. I knew there was a hell. I knew that to go to heaven, I was required to think a certain way and to believe a certain way. And then I ended up kind of getting pulled into a church that my neighbor from across the street was going to. And that was a Baptist church, but not like Southern Baptist, like Midwest Baptist, which is just basically on par with evangelical. And so they were a little bit more serious. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but like very much invested in this relationship with God. And that's just like the center of everything. And so it really presented to me a very galvanized view of the faith. And I ate it up like it was ice cream because it was delicious. And it gave me black and white. It gave me boundaries. It gave me a box. And I'm a very frantic, crazy. My mind is a certain way where that just incredibly appealed to me. And so I didn't really ask any questions. I just ate it all up. And at the same time, they're presenting to me philosophies around sexuality, which included a movement called the purity culture. There was a lot of books written about that. One in particular stuck out that was written by Joshua Harris, who has since deconverted and discarded that book as something that is now irrelevant and untrue from his point of view. But I loved it. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to stay virginal until I marry my husband. And it gave me permission to not have to learn how to talk to people I was attracted to. So I remained socially inept and dysfunctional, not talking to anyone that I had a crush on, and constantly like reading into little behaviors. And it was bad. So I ingested all of that. And at the same time, when I was 13, I started to doubt all of it. And for really no reason other than why the fuck are you telling me this? Like, how does this make any sense? I wasn't asking any really big questions, just like why and how. Like I didn't get to some corner and I was like, but how can God be omnipresent, omnipotent, and omnibenevolent? And like, I wasn't asking these big philosophical, divisive questions. I was just like, how did you come to this conclusion? And no one could give me a solid answer. And everyone saw me as like this big problem to be fixed. I felt like I was seen as like a cancer, not contagious, but just like a cancer to myself. And so I was treated as like this project that people needed to save my life. And so that I was treated with that desperation, which I internalized. And I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, why are people so upset about like what I'm experiencing? There must be something wrong with me and with the questions that I'm asking. And so instead of trusting my intuition and my critical thinking skills that were starting to bud, I internalized everyone else's reactions. I continued to believe what I was told in terms of being like I had a wretched heart. That's something that the Bible teaches, or at least that evangelical Christianity teaches, that you're originally sinful. You know, nothing good comes out of you. If anything good happens, it's because God did it through you. And so you just, in and of it, you're bad. You're just bad. And so I internalized that. And so I had a really hard time pushing against that very heavily flowing river that was just rushing against me. And so I never was able to fully extract myself from it in those days of like high school and stuff. And so I was constantly on this like roller coaster of like, do I believe? Don't I believe? Is God talking to me? Isn't he? Should I continue to debate with my friends about religion? And like, it was really traumatic and a huge distraction in a time that should be full of growth, I would think. So for some of that time, I called myself an atheist, and I was a project for a lot of my friends to work on. And in the end, when I was graduating high school, I had the option of like, okay, do I go to college or what? And at the time, I was like, well, I'm an idiot. I really believed I was an idiot. And so I was like, I can't go to college because I'll just do terribly. Plus, if God is real, then the best thing you can do with your life is to grab as many souls as possible to get them into heaven. Like literally, like I couldn't see any other way of seeing the world. If this was true, then what is anyone doing other than trying to save people's souls? Which I like honor that part of me. Like if it's true, that was a really good logical conclusion. So much so that I like after high school, I left the US. I moved to Mexico. I became a missionary, and I was there for 2 years, trying to convert people and doing evangelism. Like we would just drive around and just set up and invite everyone and do these presentations and tell our testimony and convince people to accept Jesus into their heart. And But despite being in this even more sensationalistic kind of mystical environment, my doubts didn't go away. The dissonance did not go. And so for some of that time when I was a missionary in Mexico, I was an atheist. So that shit just did not go away. And so finally I left after a couple of years and slowly created some distance from that. But that was 17 years ago that I left missions. And it's just been this tumultuous path ever since to try to heal up from it. And that's involved using my voice here on platforms, on Everyone's Agnostic, on Everyone's Autonomous, and anywhere else I can to talk about that experience, to talk about how difficult deconverting is, to talk about how difficult doubting is, to talk about how difficult healing from religion is, to talk about how difficult it is to reintegrate into the earth and to be a part of the ape kingdom and to realize you're part of this very long story that's been happening for billions of years, and to find your place in that. And so that has now become, one of my many passions. And so more or less, that's kind of where I've come from and what's landed me into what I'm doing now.
Well, that's a hell of a story.
Thank you. I made it myself.
No, I'm sorry. Everything you say sounds fucking sarcastic.
No, I'm just joking. You're totally good. I'm just an asshole.
No, trust me, so am I. So I have to temper myself. See, you're bringing out the asshole. Your asshole feels my asshole.
Perfect. Let's do that. Okay.
That doesn't sound good either. Anyway, I mean, not to kink shame.
No.
If you're into that thing.
Yeah, if you're just wanting to put assholes up against another asshole, like, who's to say?
You do you, man.
Yeah,
or
right.
You do somebody else or several.
That's
other
right. Whatever.
Your uterus as a direct conduit to heaven is a great vision I had.
What?
You were saying that your job was to have these kids and send souls to heaven, basically.
Not to have kids. I never internalized that.
Oh, I thought.
No, just the purity culture. Just saving sex for your husband was the big message.
Okay.
Not so much reproduction. I didn't get that as much. That was more of a cultural message than it was a religious one.
Okay. All right. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So right now, at this moment in time, are you happy with where you've come to? You think?
I mean, that's a loaded question.
Well,
I mean, what is happiness and where am I?
Right, but I mean...
But I hear what you're saying. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of the work that I've done in my life. I'm proud of the ways that I've grown. I'm proud of who I've become and or who I am that I've released out. Day to day, it can be hard being who I am, but that's how it is for most of us. I think it's hard for us to be who we are. But yeah, I think that's the best way for me to answer it, that I am really proud of myself. Yeah.
Well, I just noticed that, I've kind of followed you a little bit. I'm on Facebook and I see you, and I noticed that you kind of just bit the bullet and started doing what you love with photography or whatever. And
yeah.
I thought that was a pretty big leap because apparently you had like a pretty stable income, a job.
Did.
Like a good job, which
yeah.
you would give to me if you were going to give an award.
Yeah, I know, right? I was an executive assistant, a senior executive assistant. I was making $70,000 a year, and I was bored out of my mind. Okay, and I was like, but every day I'd go in there and I'd be like, okay, time to schedule another meeting. Time to read another email, time to go babysit another executive and make sure that they sign this piece of paper. And I'm like, how much money is it worth it to me to keep doing this? Like, is this like I've achieved a large sum of money and is this going to do it for me? Like, am I happy doing this for the rest of my life? And it was a very privileged decision, I'll admit, to be able to say, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, because I could die at fucking any moment. And that doesn't mean I want to live my life completely frivolously and disregard all financial elements. But I do think that there was a lot of flexibility to be had. And so I just got really depressed. And I had just experienced a breakup that was, that relationship was really fulfilling. And to have lost it highlighted all the other areas that I was incredibly bored in. And so that kind of pushed me to the edge of like, do I really want to be doing this for the rest of my life, sitting at this computer for 8 hours a day, doing everyone else's beckoning? Or is there something more? And like I said, it was really a privileged position to be in, to even ask myself that and to feel like maybe there are other options. And so I just got really depressed. And plus, that's when I was starting to work with Dave Warnock. You're in Nashville. You know him, right?
Yeah, I interviewed him for the show.
Yeah. So I was starting to work with him. I managed his tour for Dying Out Loud, and being around Dave and being around talking around death all the time really can't help but change your perspective on things. And so I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And so I took FMLA and went on a medical leave, and just really took some time to think and decided that this isn't how I wanted to live the rest of my life. And so I reconsidered a lot of things that I'm doing and explored being a virtual assistant, which turns out I'm not a huge fan of either, because it's still doing everyone else's beckoning. It's still sitting at a computer. And it turns out that I'm an incredibly creative type, and I think I've squashed it all this time by sitting at a computer and scheduling shit. And to rediscover my passion for photography and to develop my passion for videography has been so satisfying. And to be able to use those skills to support social justice efforts and communication has been a huge privilege, especially in this age of dealing with the elevated volume for anti-racism efforts following the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis. So it's been a fucking crazy 12 months. And I'm on some weird ass journey that I don't know exactly where it's going, but I just know I can't sit in a cube anymore. I can't do it no matter how much I'm paid. And so I'm trying to find ways to make my living doing less work. And it's a big dream. It's a really big dream, but we'll see if it works. It helps to have a partner who's earning some money too, but and renting out a couple of rooms in our house has helped me to be able to afford this. And we probably have a year or so before we start being in real trouble, but things are going pretty well so far. And I've been doing this coaching work for people who are exploring ethical non-monogamy, because I've been polyamorous for 3 years and have learned a shit ton. And I'm really good at it. And so I've been coaching people who are engaged in that, because it is a very difficult thing to do. It requires a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of communication, a lot of sense of yourself and a separateness of yourself from other people, which requires some emotional regulation. So I've been really enjoying doing that. And so yeah, things are coming along, and we'll see how they develop over time. It's all very limbo-y. I feel very precarious about all of it. I don't know how this is all going to go.
Well, I admire your bravery, because to me that's what it is. I mean, I don't know the fuck I could do any of that shit. I'm way too comfortable. I hate change, and I would really have issues with that. So I really live vicariously through people like you, I guess, because I'm too lazy and cowardly to do it myself. So I have to live through y'all. But you're making my segues for me, because the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was the ethical non-monogamy focus in your life. You say you've been polyamorous for 3 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess maybe 3.5. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually didn't know a damn thing about it until I started becoming part of, when I became part of the secular community, and apparently people are just fucking everywhere. I didn't know. Nobody told me about the fucking and the orgies. I was unaware. I was not invited to the fucking and the orgies, which I'm disappointed about.
Oh no.
No. But I learned more in that, and I've only been like 4 or 5 years. I have found, because I had a 2-part episode about polyamory.
Oh really?
Yeah, a year and a half ago, and I had like 4 people on. Get 4 people doing a show about polyamory.
That's ironic.
Yeah, don't you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little too ironic.
Okay, no.
You started it.
I know. It's my own fault. But everything I've learned about it, about the trust, about knowing oneself well enough to know what if you can deal with it, the different kinds, each individual relationship is different. It doesn't have to look the same. Everybody's going to be different as long as it's ethical non-monogamy, which some people think is cheating, which is not the same fucking thing. Ethical being the main, you have to communicate, and you set up rules or whatever you do, make sure you're following the rules. But I'm not gonna, I know a little bit, but
yeah, no, you've got it all down. I'm very impressed. Yeah.
So I don't think I'm built for that. That's just me.
That's fair.
Different.
Yeah.
I'm old school. It's possible I could, but like I'm 110 now.
You're 110.
I'm 110. I look good. No,
You look it. Yeah.
I look 110 is what you're telling me.
You put it out there.
Wow.
You set it up for me, and all I could do was just follow through with the insult.
Well, it's okay. I just turned 46, so I'm feeling kind of. But I am interested in this. It's very fascinating to me, because it's something I never knew about before, and I didn't understand I didn't even know that this could be a thing. Right?
Yeah.
And jealousy has always been something I'm like, well, how could you with jealousy, right? And that word just keeps popping up in my head, and then I learned, well, you can kind of deal with that. Have you never heard of dealing with emotions before, Chris?
Yeah.
Anyway, so what has been your experience with kind of this journey for you with ethical non-monogamy?
Yeah, like if I wanted to focus in on jealousy, I've learned a lot about jealousy because when my partner, who I'm married to, and I opened up in early 2017, I had my pick of the crop. Like as a woman who's ethically non-monogamous, a straight woman who's looking for dudes, they're in it. They're like, I don't care. Like, I like sex. I like girls. Like, I had no problem finding people who are interested. Whereas my partner, who's male, like finding women who are interested in non-monogamy is more difficult. And I think that's culturally related. So I had about a good 6 months advance on him of getting to date and acquiring a partner that I kind of ended up being kind of committed to and going into a long-term thing with. So I had all this experience, and he never felt any jealousy. My partner that I'm married to, like it never really came up for him, and he handled everything really well and like just naturally non-possessive and not really grossed out by any of it at all. And so that was nice to not have to deal with that. However, when we were all sitting around a bonfire one night, hanging out with a group of our friends, and one of my friends across the bonfire is giggling to herself because my partner showed up on her Tinder, and she's like, "Oh, what if I swiped right on him?" And so she does, and then they start dating. Like, so that's when that started. So he started dating a friend of ours, and that's the only person he's dated this entire time. But the point is that when they started talking about being something, I'm sitting here like, okay, this is the big opportunity to find out what's inside of me, because I went into this knowing you have to know that shit's going to come up for you. You don't go in there hoping that you're going to be resilient. You got to prepare yourself, and you've got to be committed to contending with the feelings that come up and owning them instead of projecting them out onto your partner and being like, you're hurting me, you're doing this, you're doing that, instead of reflecting on yourself and thinking, what is this reaction about? And so once he started dating, I told him, I was like, okay, here we go. Like, we're going to find out what's inside of me. Like, maybe I'll have no jealousy at all. And I'll be like, hey, let's have a 3-way. Maybe this is just going to help me figure out that I can't do poly and I can only have partners that only fuck me and not fuck anyone. Like, who knows what we're going to find out. And it turns out I'm incredibly jealous, and that needs to be said. Like, but then jealousy itself needs to be dissected. Jealousy is not a bad thing. If you have jealousy and you're polyamorous or ethically non-monogamous, it's not a deal breaker. Jealousy often reflects an insecurity that you have. It can reflect cultural standards that you were taught. And let's just be real that the cultural standards that we are taught are entirely 100% about monogamy. They're incredibly anti multiple partners because multiple partners is usually portrayed as cheating. And cheating is always portrayed as heartbreaking. It's always portrayed as disloyal. It's always portrayed as like a betrayal. And so that's what it looks like in our culture and in our minds, in the synapses that we have when we look at those scenarios. And so those were the scenarios that were playing out for me in my head. And like I said, I was very committed to engaging with those. My partner and I decided that we are not each other's enemies, that our enemy was monogamy-centric narratives. And that was my focal point as I unpacked the jealousy that I felt. And my jealousy had a lot to do with, I think for one, just not being super excited about thinking about him having sex with another person. And for a long time, I thought that made me bad at polyamory, or that made me bad at ethical non-monogamy, that I should be like getting off on them getting off, or I should even want to participate in what they're doing. And so for a long time, I held myself to this standard that I called super cool poly wife, that like I should be like, hey, you want me to like leave the house tonight so that you and your girlfriend can come over and fuck in our bed? Like, just be like overly extending myself and pushing my own boundaries in an attempt to be like a supportive, non-monogamous wife. But it turns out I just not super thrilled about the idea of thinking about him having sex with someone else. And I finally came to the conclusion that I don't need to be. That is not a requirement of me. And there's nothing lost from that. And so I was able to accept that I don't need to be there for him to tell me about how his sex life is. Like, that's not a requirement for ethical non-monogamy. Like, if I want to hear about it and he wants to share it and his girlfriend's okay with him sharing it, that's a different story. But I don't really want to hear it. So that's fine. That's perfectly fine. And then the other thing about my jealousy was an insecurity. And that insecurity comes from cultural narratives telling me what I'm supposed to be like as someone who has identified as a woman, or someone who's feminine in this culture. Like, I'm supposed to be thin. I'm supposed to wear cute dresses. I'm supposed to be flirty. I'm supposed to speak in a high-pitched voice and pretend like I'm about to try to get a lollipop from you if I'm really like, I know, gross, right? Yeah. And I'm supposed to wear a shit ton of makeup. I'm supposed to have really long hair. And I'm not supposed to talk like this over a man for an entire hour. You know, like, there's a lot of expectations that I had internalized. And so I'm not skinny. I'm like 220 pounds and 5'9". I'm not skinny. And so my husband starts dating this woman. She's smaller than me. She's got long hair. She dyes it cute colors. She puts on makeup. She loves flirting. She likes to talk about my husband's dick in public places. She is just like unabashed about her sexuality. And so I noticed, it took me some time, But it took me about 1.5 years to process my jealousy. It was a very painful period of time. But like I said, I was very focused on the common issue, which was monogamy-centric culture, or like possessiveness of each other's bodies. And so finally, like, I realized that she was a mirror for me. Like I was projecting onto her everything I thought I was supposed to be as a woman, that I've always felt that I was supposed to be, but that I was protected from by being married. Because now, like, I don't care what everyone else thinks, because this one boy likes me, and that's fine. But what if this one boy starts going and dates the epitome of everything that I think that I'm supposed to be, that I'm failing at? Like, that's going to make you feel really fucking insecure. And so it took a lot of time. I did a lot of therapy. I talked through my feelings. I talked to my husband. I got a lot of support from the additional partner that I had, talking to him about it. And even talking to her, she was very gracious and was present with me as I explored my pain. And I'm very grateful for her for that, because she didn't owe that to me. And one day it just kind of clicked. And that was the moment. It was a moment when I realized I don't want to be her. I don't. I look in the mirror and I look at my short hair, this little pixie cut that I've got. And I look at how I show up in conversations like this. I look at how transparent and honest I am. I look at my own integrity and my own agnosticism and my own healthy self-doubt. And I look at how comfortable I feel wearing what I'm wearing. And I think about how I am in this world. And I realize I don't want to be her. I really, really like who I've become. And I've worked very hard to let her come out. And so reflecting those insecurities onto her was what led me to actually loving myself. And that was an experience I never expected going into polyamory. I just thought, like, oh, I'm going to get to fuck some people. I'm going to get to like unpack some of my issues around like dating and flirting with people. But I never thought, this is how you're going to learn to love who you are. And so like, that was fucking amazing. But I really had to be committed to focusing on the issue and not projecting it out onto my partner. So I think that was your original question, but that was one of my really big takeaways from this entire experience. But, and like you mentioned earlier, with the things that you've learned about poly and ethical non-monogamy, you really have to be invested in showing up emotionally and having that emotional intelligence to practice polyamory well. But I would even say, like, the skills that you develop to be able to practice ethical non-monogamy are essential for any relationship, monogamous or not. And I think that monogamous couples get away with not having to do it as much because there's this sense of safety and security that you don't intrinsically feel in a non-monogamous setting.
So my question is, and this is something I always think about anyways, like, I can barely handle one person. Why the fuck would I want to add to that?
Yeah, don't.
Well, I mean, I'm just asking rhetorically, not you.
Sure.
But and I'm not even, let's just say you got friends. You just say, maybe you just like somebody who has a couple of friends. Some people like 100 friends and they all fucking do shit, but maybe you have one friend.
Right.
So why did you think that poly is right? Why do you think poly is right for you?
That's a great question. Yeah, the reason I got into poly was that there's a little bit of history here. So I married my partner in 2010. And like I mentioned earlier, I was carrying a lot of those really heavy narratives about purity culture and about how my body's dirty and how about sex is dirty, and narratives from culture about needing to perform as a woman in a sexual environment. We get a lot of those messages, and it can make it really difficult for us to enjoy sexual encounters. And so carrying all of that, like initially with my partner, when you get a new partner, there's like this new relationship energy, and it's intoxicating. And it was so intoxicating that like all of my inhibitions and all my baggage and all my shit was just like, just over here for a little while. Didn't need to really worry about it. But my partner is so fucking amazing, and I felt so safe with him and so secure that after a couple of years, after new relationship energy kind of winds down, and we have this established relationship. We married after 2 years of dating. We bought a house together and shit, raised some cats together. Pretty soon, the trauma starts bubbling up. It's interesting that the safer I feel, the more my trauma bubbles up to the surface, because it's like my body and my mind know that now, if any time, is the safe time to explore this. And so I started having these really strong reactions to him initiating any kind of sexual encounter with me. I would like turn away from him and like crouch up in the fetal position in bed and just like be mute. I couldn't say anything. And if it got really bad, I would have to like get up out of the bed, leave, walk over to the kitchen, and I would just like heave like over the kitchen counter, just like grabbing it, just like sobbing. I would just start wailing. And I was like, I don't know, the neighbor could probably hear us or hear me. And I just started having these really strong reactions about sex. And on top of that primary symptom, I was having secondary symptoms of like so much shame. I was terrified about what this meant, what these primary reactions meant. Like, does this mean I'm not attracted to him anymore? Does this mean that we're going to divorce? Does this mean that I'm asexual? Does this mean that we're never going to have a sex again? And therefore he's going to leave me and I have to start my life all over again? I already had one divorce before him. So like, is this going to destroy everything? And what the fuck is wrong with me? And does it mean I don't love him, that I don't want to have sex with him? So like, there was this huge spiral, just really, really bad and feeling super fucked up. And so I tried to get help. I went to like an actual like sex doctor, and they like tested certain things to just see if there's anything biological happening, which there was not. I went and spoke to a sexual therapist, and I was just way beyond being able to even articulate how I felt with someone like that. And so finally what happened is that I met this guy through circles, and he and I got along really well. And like one night we were just like talking on the phone, and we ended up talking for like 3 hours, and like he's very attractive. I was very emotionally attracted to him, and I got off the phone and I'm like, I think I want to fuck him. Huh. And so that's kind of what got me thinking, like, I can't. And why not? And what could I learn if I could? And that got me questioning, like, who says I can't? Like, if I've left religion, what is the morality behind being monogamous anymore? Like, why is that there if there is no religious compelling reason to be monogamous? And so started unpacking that and read a couple of books, told my partner about my idea. I really felt like that by being able to explore non-monogamy, that I would be able to start unpacking this shit. That I would not be able to unpack in this monogamous relationship with my partner for the rest of my life. And so that's what led me into exploring ethical non-monogamy, which then I ended up using a label called polyamory. But at this point, I don't really fucking care. I'm non-monogamous and it's ethical, and however it shows up, I don't really fucking care. So that's why I did it. And it's paid off in dividends. I learn so much. I feel such a sense of freedom that I never knew I didn't feel. At this point, if my partner told me, I need you to only have a relationship with me, I would divorce him, plain and simple. Like, it's just such a norm thing that I've gotten used to this freedom. It's like someone telling me, yeah, you need to go back to wearing dresses, like only dresses because, pants are for men. Like, no, we're past this. We are past this. I'm not even playing with you. So now it's just a fact of life that I have bodily autonomy, and that in addition to that, I act ethically to protect those that I am engaged with. So it's the best of both worlds, that I get to continue to respect and honor the people that I'm in relationship with, yet I get to keep exploring myself and knowing other people and finding out what I can learn about myself and the world through these, new intimate relationships.
So there's one thing I've noticed. I know in the community, I've known couples who were really religious, and they came out of that, and that's one of the things they do is they go, feel so unburdened by this sexual shame that religion kind of gives to you that they just go, you know, and I
Yeah.
don't blame them, you know, just kind of go wild a little bit. And, you know, who gives a shit as long as you're happy, as long as there's understanding and trust. You know, you do you. It's just kind of fun. I mean, it's kind of sad because religion puts such a lockdown on all
Yeah.
those natural urges, those, you know, that once that restriction is lifted, it's like it's all this comes out, you know.
Yeah.
And I like seeing that kind of energy. I mean, in general, I like to see people happy and just being, you know, carpe diem and just doing all that kind of good shit, you know, just like be
Yeah.
happy or whatever.
It's almost like we can be trusted to live good lives and that we don't need a book or like these predetermined standards to live by, that we can be trusted to be moral creatures.
Whatever. Fucking heathen.
I'm more ethical than most Christians I know.
Yeah. I don't think anybody argue that point.
Yeah.
Just go look at the comment section
Pass.
in any Southern article about anything remotely having to do with anything
Yeah.
remotely social justice-y.
Yeah. It's gross.
It doesn't have to be. There's plenty of atheists who do this shit too, but anyway.
You're right.
That's a whole different subject.
And that's so disappointing.
Yeah, well, that's unsurprising to me after all this
Yeah.
time. So in kind of summary here, if you had to, like, let's say you're telling somebody about your show for the first time or whatever, and is there an elevator pitch? Kind of, why the fuck should I spend however long it is, an hour and a half or whatever?
Yeah, it's a while.
Why the fuck should I invest the time to listen to this enlightened soul? I mean, she's an enlightened soul. Okay, that's cool, right? But what's in it? Of course, it's a selfish reason, but what is interesting? What is the show going to give me that maybe I didn't have before?
Well, the thing about elevator pitches is that it assumes that you have something to offer someone, and I'm never going to assume that.
Okay.
I'm not a salesperson. I'm like, if this appeals to you, come and check it out. If you hate it after an episode, peace to you. I hope you find something. But like the pitch is, if you're someone who's been affected by extremely narrow narratives during your life and you're looking to unpack those narratives and to find yourself within the larger context of a story that's happening in a universe, and to figure out how to live freely and how to know what is yours to control and what belongs to you, in addition to then knowing what belongs to others and living a life that proactively respects others' choices. That's the show. The show is to help you own your shit and to let other people own their shit, because there's so much dysfunction in relationships and there's a lot of projection of cultural narratives outwards towards other people or internalization of cultural narratives. And my show seeks to deconstruct as many narratives as possible, always with the chaser of talking about the deconstruction of a religious construct. But we're still in the elevator because apparently it broke. So we're still here.
Oh, that's right. It is supposed to be like some ridiculous.
It's supposed to be much shorter. I know. Like I said, I'm not a salesperson. I prefer.
That wasn't a good phrasing, maybe.
Oh no, it's just me. I just don't like that. I could have read a million articles on branding and social media and how to be an influencer, and I would rather not. Like none of it.
Probably good.
Yeah.
I find those sort of things tedious, even if I could do it, which I don't know. I don't know if I'd have the wherewithal or the desire to do it.
Yeah. It feels manipulative to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what that shit is.
Yeah.
Advertising and shit like that. That's manipulation.
I'm like, if you like my shit, you like my shit. I'm not going to ask you to stay. I'm not going to.
Well, that's no fun. This is fucking capitalism.
Fuck capitalism.
Woo! Excuse me. That didn't come out right at all. I love it here. America.
Yeah, so great.
So great. Number one.
On a scale of
1 to 1. I don't fucking know. Who the fuck knows? Anyway, so I wanted to thank you for coming on. I've listened to your show, and like I said, I knew you from Everyone's Agnostic, and I always thought you were pretty cool.
Thank you.
I listened to it, and somebody complained that you cursed a lot.
I know.
What the fuck?
They left a review. They loved Cass, but they just hate that I swear it all the time and that I constantly talk about how triggered I am. It was my favorite review ever.
Oh, yeah, that's not... Fuck you. Yeah.
I know. I was like, okay.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, I do too, but I guess it's, he just doesn't cuss that much. Not because he's all fucking, pure and shit. Some people just don't, generally speaking.
Yeah.
But I mean, just because I hate that fucking assumption that because you curse, sometimes somehow your points aren't valid or some shit, I mean, if
and
fucking, Einstein said equals motherfucking MC squared, bitch. Now what? I mean,
irrelevant. Clean up, Einstein.
Well, fuck, one of the greatest scientists gave one of the most iconic formulas of all time, but he cursed. Well, fuck that shit.
If you've seen enough shit, you're going to be angry a lot. And if you're angry a lot, you might swear a lot. And just because you swear doesn't make your insights about shit any less relevant. Yeah. So if your big fucking issue is that I swear too much, you need to fucking reorient and listen to the goddamn message and distill it down to that. Like, to be so fixated on semantics, like, fuck that.
So fuck that, basically, in general.
Fuck that, and thank you.
Do you want to give kind of where you can be located, your show?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks for giving me that space. Yeah, so if people want to listen to Everyone's Autonomous, it is at everyone'sautonomous.com, and you can stream it on any podcast app. I'm pretty sure I'm on all of them. I've got a couple Facebook groups if people want to be a part of that, but that's a whole different thing. Also, if you are curious about ethical non-monogamy, you're practicing it and having problems in your relationships or any kind of thing you want to work out with ethical non-monogamy, or even religious trauma, I also coach around that and more boring things like how to set a budget. You can learn more about that at mariedelefant.com, and that's D as in dog, and then the word elephant, which is spelled exactly how you would imagine it's spelled. Oh, and you brought up the photography. So if people want to check out my photography, the company is called Marquee, and it's M-A-R as in Marie, which I am Marie, and then K-E-I, which is the name of my partner, Keith. So it's Marquee photo and video if people want to check that out. There's a lot of, I'm posting a lot of information about the social justice events that are happening locally here in Minneapolis.
I don't know why you had to say D as in dog. Couldn't you come up with like damn awesome? I don't know.
You're right. I should probably develop a new way to articulate the D. D as in dick.
I was going to say, yeah, D as in...
D as in dick.
Fucking sex positive.
He said upset.
What country you think this is? You can murder people all day long, but don't show a titty.
You are not wrong at all.
Puritanical bullshit.
You're right. You're 100% right.
All right, well, I'm going to let you get back to whatever you're doing. I'll stick you in the green room.
I'm drinking with friends downstairs.
So, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. I totally emailed you out of the blue, and you were very gracious to invite me on. So thank you.
You must have been bored. So, I'll take it. That's fine. All right,
thank you.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
Well, that was awesome. So Marie is one of the groups. She's in a super secret group. If you want to join, maybe you can ask her. I don't know. Maybe she'll say fuck you. Maybe she'll let you in. I don't know. Who knows? I was grandfathered in because of Cass. So whether I'd be there, regardless, who knows? But anyway, I want to thank her for coming on. Go check out her show. The beer is gone, so I got to get more beer. But I guess that's it for tonight. But until next time, guess what you can do? See if you can guess. Y'all take it easy now, okay?